Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what is your I don't get paid enough for this shit moment? Plumber. Owner of a mobile home called and said they had a stinky yard. I could smell it when I pulled up. The mobile home was new and had only been set up for about 8 months. While setting it up, someone didn't tighten a no-hub band of the toilet in the kids' bathroom. 8 months of flushed toilet was all over the ground, under the home, and had just started being noticed outside. I told the homeowner to call the guys that set it up to come fix it. I wasn't crawling under there. Oh God. And it must have been smelling long before it got that bad. I'm picturing them walking around their house for months, asking what is that smell. It had brick underpinning. So it mostly was just pooling underneath the home. Plumber as well. Had to do a tie for a 6-waste stack main to offset it for a boiler to go in later at a hospital. Told all staff and had maintenance shut down bathrooms from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for us to do the offsets. Had everything measured, cut and ready to move into place. Fucking staff on every floor ignored the signs because we got constant flushes of fresh shit and shredded toilet paper. At one point I was holding the outlet side of a horizontal piece with my hard hat and trying to no-hub band the fitting for it in place while shit literally rolled down my back and into my shirt, down my pants. My socks were soaked in the waist. Took us a total time of 45 minutes but scheduled a 2-hour window just in case. Worst part of this was that they had another bathroom option just down the hall. So inconsiderate, this trade sucks sometimes. Edit. Yes, we tagged out as many valves as possible, believed to shut down the stacks. This building was really 5 different buildings built in different eras and tied together. The maintenance did know enough to give us confirmation on which valves close which lines. We also discovered nearly 2 years later that multiple sections of the building were cross-supplied, meaning that water is able to flow into a line that it technically should be able to supply. It's not just as simple as locking a bathroom door. It's multiple bathrooms over 6 stories, and one of the floors happened to be a psych ward that has bathrooms that do not lock, and we were not permitted to enter. As an installer, you don't get to schedule this kind of shit when you want. Your supervisor tells you when it's going to happen and gives you a timeline to complete it. They coordinate with a GC who coordinates with the staff, and they determine what day, time, location is best. We barely get to week in on poorly engineered system designs without waiting weeks or months for decisions to be made. Is that a situation where you can call whoever hired you and say we're leaving until you get your staff in order, or demand extra pay or something? Seems like they made the working environment a hazard for you. No one should have to have shit falling on them while working. Back when I did plumbing, went out to a job that required us to crawl into the crawl space of about a 200-year-old mill house. I opened up the crawl space and shined my light in there across the crawl space to see all the rafters and pipes just wrapped in snakeskins and some snakes slithering away into the darkness. Nope, the fuck out of that one. I'd rather crawl those shit than snakes. On a remodel, I reached in a pile of insulation to grab a water line and grabbed a snake instead. Cut my hand on a nail and busted my head on the way out of there. I worked at Circuit City when I was 17. Heard a noise of packaging being opened in the movie section, found a guy crouched down cutting open DVD boxes and stealing the discs. He looked at me, held his knife out and said, "Got a problem?" I just replied, "I don't get paid enough for this shit," and backed off. I went to the back room of the warehouse area to call a manager to tell them what happened. Never could get a hold of anyone, so I just chilled in the warehouse area for a half-hour to decompress. The wise choice. Why get shanked over some fucking megacore DVDs? Imagine getting killed over Big Mama's house. When I was doing 90% of my boss job in hopes of a full-time promotion that I had been promised for 3 years, and he took all the credit and told me my promotion wasn't in the budget. Bro, fuck that. Yup. I left 2 weeks later. I was volunteering at a state park. One of the paid park rangers would drive people around to various locations to work. Then come check on you throughout the day. Bitch tried to drop me off at the bathrooms and told me to clean them. I was like, nope, that's not happening. I'm here to work outside. She told me, "You're gonna do whatever I tell you to do or I won't sign off on your hours." Then I had to explain that not everyone who volunteered to work was there because they'd been sentenced to community service. Edit. Didn't get an actual apology, but I ended up working on removing some invasive plants that day at a nice spot overlooking a river. Instead of cleaning toilets. and worked with different park rangers for the rest of the time I volunteered there. What was her reaction? I've been in a similar situation. Parent made me volunteer for whole summer vacations. One retirement home, the event coordinator was a total asshole and told him I wasn't there to get bitched at. He threatened to not sign on my hours and I asked him what hours. He replied with, "Oh, your family must not love you," and I think at that moment he realized I'm a fucking 13-year-old. So he called my mom and told her they are all full for volunteers this summer and to leave me somewhere else for free daycare. I'm curious about that too. I'm a public librarian. I was helping someone in the computer room and turned to tell someone he needed to keep his exclamations at the video he was watching down. Just then, the woman I was helping leapt aside because the man I was shushing pissed himself. It ran down onto the jacket he had tied around his waist, down the chair, onto the ground. Turns out he'd snuck in alcohol and was totally blackout drunk. I told him he had to leave. He put the piss-covered jacket on and stumbled out. As I returned with gloves and cleaning supplies, another patron decided this was a good time to complain about some kids who were making noise. I took a deep breath and said, "This is a good time for us all to appeal to our higher selves and do our best in the moment. Please just adapt for a minute." Then I thought about the student loans I took out for the master's degree as I scrubbed up piss. I took a deep breath and said, "This is a good time if we all just appeal to our higher selves and do our best in the moment. Please just adapt for a minute." There really ought to be some kind of beatification process for librarians. Absolute saint. I worked at a heating and air conditioning company doing bookkeeping. I was being trained by the company's accountant. If I made a mistake, the owner would literally scream at me full voice. I overheard him talking to his brother and his brother had told him not to scream at me. The owner said, "You have to tear them down to build them up." I decided I wasn't going to take another day of his screaming after that. Nor should you. I am a CPA and used to do bookkeeping. No way in hell should you ever let someone treat you like that. Those are rookie numbers. Nope, I quit. I remember one of the assistant managers at the grocery store I worked at said the district managers wanted all the employees to be afraid of management or something asinine like it. I told him that is a good way to get employees to do the bare minimum. I only went out of my way to help the managers I liked. He agreed that he got the best results out of people by treating them with respect. Lo and behold, the number of shitty managers we had that ran stores into the ground. My first job was at a small town grocery store when I was 15 in 1992. The store manager there was without question the best boss I will ever have. He empowered the part-time kids to make decisions in their department because we knew what was going on. He promoted women to management positions at a rate higher than any other store. At one time all major departments were managed by women: meat, produce, grocery, deli, cash. He never had a kid miss a prom because of work. On prom nights all the adults had to cover our shifts. He never raised his voice to a customer or employee, and the only thing you could do to really get fired was to steal that he took personally. I learned more from working with him than 5 years of school and countless management training seminars. Since this has gotten some good traction, I will expand. He had a way of knowing when something was off about you and would always manage to find a way to have a chat with you in the break room. You could talk to him about life and love, your parents, college decisions, friends, and all the other things about your teen years that seem unmanageable. He doled out advice and life lessons in 15-minute increments. More than one person had a cry with him after a breakup, and sometimes that 15-minute break would need to be a 30. Then when he managed to get you on track, he would smack the table, laugh and say, "Well, that's enough about that." And then get up and leave and never mention it again, unless of course you did first. He also had a knack for giving out lessons in passing. I remember one day he walked up to me and said with a straight face, "Luke, promise me that you will never make fun of a man's shoes, okay?" And I laughed and said, "Sure, why?" He replied, "Because you never know how far he's walked in them to get where he is today." There's something so simple about that it's stuck with me 25 years later. One time at Christmas when the lines were long, there was a bit of a commotion at one of the tills. One of the poorer guys in town didn't have enough money to pay for all his holiday groceries. They were trying to figure out what to put back so he could afford it. Pat walked up and asked what was going on. The man sheepishly looked at him and said, "Sorry Pat, I'm a bit short this week." Right away Pat looked at the man and the cashier and said, Take what you need and put the rest on my tab, pay me when you can. Then he walked away. Many years later, I shared this story in my eulogy at his funeral. I looked up and saw that same man in the back row. Our eyes locked and he gave me a nod. I like to think that small gesture meant a lot to his family. Edit: when he was dying of cancer a few years back, I went to see him in the hospital. We had a really long chat and talked about the good old days. His last life lesson to me was about stealing. He said that in the store we used to have thousands and thousands of dollars in merchandise, but there wasn't a damn thing in there worth stealing. He said that there wasn't anything in there worth losing your reputation and honor for. He said, look at me, I'm dying here and the only thing I have left is my reputation. I said I'd try to come back and see him again and offered him my hand. He told me that there wasn't going to be any more time for another visit. He took my hand, looked me in the eye and said, you were always a good kid, I'm going to miss you and I love you. I told him I loved him too and gave him a hug and then left. He died the next week. It was a real honor when I was able to speak at his funeral on behalf of all the part-time kids who worked with him over the course of his career. Pat Jones, you were awesome, and now all these people know how awesome you were too. Edit: thank you so much for all the awards. These are tough times for a lot of people right now. If you want to honor Pat's memory, please be kind to a complete stranger tomorrow. Tell M. Jonesy sent ya. It's true. Had a boss that thought yelling at everyone, and I mean everyone including customers, was the way to go. So many people quit. Then that dude was fired and they hire a mentally sane person. Night and day difference in employee retention and sales.